Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of NHLN Opinion Plus, a weekly series airing every Friday. This is a space for our opinions where we talk about current events and questions the Latino community is curious about. Today, we are joined by Executive Director of the New Hampshire Council of Developmental Disabilities, Isadora Rodriguez-Legendre. She entered her position in 2016 and previously was a Program Director of Supportive Services for Veteran Families within the Derecho Project, a veteran program based in New York. Welcome, Isadora, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
It's a pleasure. I'm excited. So, for our viewers who may not know about New Hampshire's council, could you provide a brief introduction of what you do and what your mission is?
Sure. The New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities, which we like to call the DD Council for short, is dedicated to dignity, full rights of citizenship, cultural diversity, equal opportunities, and full participation for all New Hampshire citizens with developmental disabilities. So what that means is that we do a lot of advocacy, capacity building, and systems change work that improves the lives of New Hampshire citizens with DD. We do that primarily through collaboration with other agencies, programs, and projects. And we really work to remove barriers and support opportunities for people to participate in their communities.
Thank you for that explanation. So what have been the pandemic's biggest impacts on the council's operations throughout this unprecedented year?
So we have had to switch gears like many organizations have had to do. Fortunately, because we don't provide direct services to people with disabilities, we didn't have to close the office. So we have remained open throughout. We're a very small team. We're only 3 full-timers and a handful of part-timers working at the council. And our work is really driven by our council membership by law. So the DD Council was created by a federal law known as the DD Act, and by law, 60% of our council must be individuals with developmental disabilities or family members impacted by developmental disabilities. And that really ensures that our work is led by people who are directly impacted. And so a lot of our work has had to move to virtual platforms. We typically support a lot of conferences and trainings, events in the community that, outreach to potential members, and let people know kind of who we are and what we do. And we've kind of had to shift gears to provide more opportunities for engagement with the DD Council and more advocacy through online platforms.
Thank you for that. It's great to see that you've been able to continue most of your operations. Yeah. And so that actually might fall into my next question of what has been the council's priorities this past year and going into this new year?
That's a great question. So we develop a 5-year plan, and in that 5-year plan, we typically have goals, objectives, and activities. And our goals and activities are all based in our 5-year plan work. So in this 5-year plan, some of the topics are children's issues, quality of life, personal choice, and access to quality services. So as you can imagine, those are very broad topics that allows us to really be innovative and creative with how we do those things and how we impact the community in those ways. I would say that some of the notable activities in 2020, because of the COVID pandemic, where we were able to provide like online virtual gubernatorial town halls. We collaborated on disability voting webinars to encourage people to participate in civic activities, right? And get out and vote for those candidates that most represented their values. We also worked on a direct support professional training in collaboration with several other partners because, workforce is one of the main issues that comes up over and over for people with disabilities. In order to participate in the community and work and be involved and even live independently in the community, that requires support. And so we try and make sure that we are constantly educating the public that, direct support is a worthwhile profession, and it is so meaningful to the people that need those supports in order to live and work and play in the community.
Right, absolutely. And that might fall actually also into my next question, which is, from the council's perspective, what have been some of the most common challenges for New Hampshire residents with developmental disabilities this past year? You said specifically employment. I'm wondering, what else with this unique year happening?
Yeah, so like many of us, I think all of us have experienced challenges with social isolation, right? Which brings with it, sometimes mental wellness issues like anxiety or depression. And that's not just people with disabilities, that's many people have been impacted in those ways because of COVID. The difference is that many people with developmental disabilities don't have the same access to technology as some of us. And so where I think society kind of quickly adapted to, Zoom meetings and more social opportunities that are web-based, it wasn't as easy a transition for people with disabilities who may need support, who may not have access. Again, New Hampshire has some very rural areas that don't even have internet or broadband service. And so it's been a challenge to really get those people connected and involved in their communities in a meaningful way so that they don't feel so isolated, so they don't feel so alone. Another big challenge has been around education and web-based learning. I think remote learning has been a challenge for a lot of families who have students who need supports in order to, advance educationally. And so that has been something that we have also looked at as a priority and have worked with organizations like the Parent Information Center and Able New Hampshire, which are, providing education and advocacy around remote learning to make sure that kids with disabilities are getting a fair, appropriate, free public education.
Absolutely, that's so crucial. It's so important. And yeah, it's really things to keep in mind, really important things. Thank you for that. I had no idea. I wouldn't have thought of either of those, really. They don't come to mind, at least straight to my mind. Next, I'm wondering, what about people of color with these disabilities? Are there any further disparities, especially regarding technology? There were statistics that Latinos, typically their households have less access to computer laptops, but also internet. So, yeah.
Yeah, and anything that is a challenge for the general public, I think is exacerbated when you add a different layer of adversity, right? And so it has been important to us this past year that we also are providing resources, information, and access to those much needed resources to communities of color. One of our priorities has been to ensure that our materials, our outreach materials, our 5-year plan, our annual report, that all of those are translated into Spanish and sent out to community partners where people of color may have better access to it than our office, which is in Concord. It's a state office, and so we don't see a lot of foot traffic. But we make sure that we mail out those to communities where other people may be, and just make sure that we are communicating that we are a resource and that we value difference, and we want people's opinions, and we want information about what's important to them so that we can develop our next 5-year plan, taking those elements into consideration. I would say also that we have done a pretty good job at getting information out there about our small grants. We did create, because of COVID, we did create what we call technology grants. So these are like, if somebody doesn't have a device to connect to for the internet, or if a family has more than one kiddo who's doing online learning and one of them has a developmental disability, if they need additional apps on their device. We are also, the cap is $500 for an individual and up to $1,000 for a family. And so that could also go to pay for your internet costs or a portion of it for a year. So we've tried to kind of reduce the barriers in that way for people that have really this access to technology barrier challenge.
Right, that's amazing. It's a great variety of resources available. So to jump ahead, since we don't have too much time left, I really want to talk about the council's 5-year plan, which you've mentioned. It was announced in 2016 and it's meant to end September 2021. I'm wondering if you could give us a quick rundown on the goals and also if the pandemic has hindered the plan in any way this year.
So we had obviously planned for certain activities. In our 5-year plan, I already mentioned the objectives. One is around children's issues. We're always interested in policy work and working with organizations that support families in education. And so some of that work, like I said, has gone virtual. But for example, the Parent Information Center, together with ABLE, was able to do a webinar on inclusive education for families. And then we actually paid to have that webinar translated into Spanish so that it could be accessible to many communities. A lot of our other projects and activities, unfortunately, had to be canceled, and we had to kind of reshift and find different ways of meeting some of those target goals. But I have to say that, you know, the team here is very creative and collaborative, and wherever there's an opportunity, we really welcome anyone from the community to bring it to our attention so that we can partner with organizations that are already doing this work. So we've been able to do a lot of trainings and events online, and we continue to kind of plan for how to do some of the more typical events that we do. Like we hold a winter award ceremony every year, and unfortunately, because we couldn't do it in person, we were able to still have an award ceremony taped, pre-recorded, and then put out as an online event, which was pretty successful. So we're very glad that our community is used to change and is used to kind of shifting and going with the flow and really making sure that people with disabilities have what they need in order to participate in all activities in the community.
Absolutely.
The community now is online. So we've done also big grants that help facilities and like community service providers with their technology access so that their residents or participants can have more opportunities while they're in their day programs, for example.
Right, that's amazing. Yeah, it seems like a great opportunity or amazing opportunity for so many creative solutions. It's the time for that. Thank you so much for talking with us, giving a rundown, so many in-depth explanations. So thank you, Executive Director Isadora Rodriguez-Legendre, and for being our guest on NHLN Opinion Plus. Please tune in next week for another episode. Follow us on Twitter at NH Latino News and Instagram at NH_Latino News. I'm Belen Dumont with NHLN Opinion Plus, and I'll see you all next time.